Thanks for checking out this no spoilers movie review. This is for the film Knife+Heart, a 2018 film that is currently streaming on the Shudder streaming service, which, if people don't know, it's a streaming service for horror specifically. So, good stuff. It is knife and then the plus sign heart for the title. So I don't know if it's supposed to be knife plus heart, but I say it knife and heart. I think it sounds a lot better that way. So, getting right into it, I just have a bunch of notes on my phone. I'm going to go through it. Like I said, no spoilers. There's some thematic type stuff that I'm going to talk about, like some deeper meaning things going on, which does not spoil the actual film itself, though. So you can watch this, no problem, and still go see the film and not really know what's going to go on so much. So off the bat, a few things that might turn some people off of this film. One thing is it's a French language film, so it's subtitles. So I know there are a lot of people out there who are just like, I don't want to have to read when I watch a movie. But like I've said before, give it 5 to 10 minutes and then your brain just starts not even recognizing that you're reading. Once you get past that time period, you're just like, oh, I'm just watching this movie. So you can get past it like that. The other thing is this is a queer horror film, which there may be some people out there who really aren't into that or will say, well, I don't like, queer film. I don't want to. It's film. Just give it a shot. This is a good film. I do recommend this film, I will say up front, especially because it's a modern Giallo film, which not a lot of people are doing Giallo films, and the Giallo subgenre of horror is a very good subgenre that I think should really be mined a little bit more than it has been recently. I mean, the last modern Giallo film I remember seeing is The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears, which I'd have to go back and rewatch that, but I think, based off what I remember, that I like Knife+Heart more than that film. But anyway, I'm going to get into the review here. The music, the first thing that occurred to me is the music is used to great effect in this. I thought the soundtrack was really good. It was very well done. This isn't anything like Goblin. People who think of Giallo and think of great soundtracks think of Argento and his relationship with Goblin. And yes, that music was outstanding. Those soundtracks were great, but this is really good too. And I don't know, there's just something to be said for a really nice soundtrack, especially with a horror film, that just like, I don't know, it just makes you feel happy. At least it does for me. And I really liked it. They did a great job. There were a few moments where it was almost a little over the top, but then it would just come up to that kind of precipice of about to be over the top with the music, and then would just like come right back. I enjoyed it. There were a few stretches of no dialogue, especially in the beginning. The very intro, before they give you the title card, is all silent. There's no dialogue whatsoever, but it worked really well. And I think it built tension really well. They got into things immediately, pretty much. And if you know Giallo, it's all about this black-gloved killer who's going around killing people. And you got to figure out, what's the mystery behind this? Who is this mystery person who's killing people? So they get into that immediately. Someone gets killed immediately. We're doing this. So, and that's how it is with pretty much every Giallo. It's like, all right, we're doing this now. But the no dialogue portions were good. And that's not an easy thing to pull off. And I like to see, especially in horror films, where they're using silence and stretches of no dialogue to great effect. Because I feel like there's so many filmmakers out there in every genre who feel like they have to keep people talking in order for people to understand what's going on. And you don't have to. You can show it. And I think they do a good job showing it in this. It's done as kind of like an 80s period piece, which is cool because you can kind of feel that, mainly with the way people do their hair and their clothing and everything. But I think it also feels like it can apply in a modern setting as well. Like, it's not set in that period to a point where you feel the entire time like it has to be in that period. You could feel like, oh, it kind of feels like modern as well. So I kind of like those types of things where, like, this is where we are, but at the same time it feels like it can be many different decades. So there isn't a lot of comedic aspect to this because it does keep itself pretty firmly in the horror area, but there are a few comedic moments, and I think when they occur, they're not distracting. They work well, and they actually land as funny moments, so I appreciate that. It's hard to get that balance. It's hard to like throw a little bit of comedy into a horror film especially, and not have it act as like a speed bump that jars people out of what's going on and that kind of atmosphere of horror. The killer makes some crazy noises when the killings are happening, which I think makes it even more unnerving and weird and quirky, and I like that touch to it. I mean, they could have easily done it where it's just like silent, the killer kills, but there's like these weird noises that you're just like, that's very weird. And going to the whole quirky thing, I do think in general this film has some quirky, interesting characters. It has a few quirky, interesting plot points and quirky, interesting things going on within it, which I think is a very important thing, not just because this is something that's typically done in Giallo, but it's also the fact that once you've watched the film once, you solve the mystery along with watching, with everyone else watching the film. So there's not a lot of rewatch value in just watching it to solve that mystery because you already solved it. It's not new if you're going to watch it again. So you need interesting characters, really good acting, good dialogue, and quirkiness adds a lot to that makes you kind of want to go back and rewatch. So I think this film, for the right people, will definitely instill a feeling of, I want to rewatch this. For me, I could rewatch this film. I don't feel like I really, really, really want to rewatch it just because I thought it was a good film. I didn't think it was a great film. I enjoyed it enough. It's one of those films that just falls into my category of I had a good time watching it. I enjoyed it once. I don't feel like I necessarily need to go back. But if I was with someone and they were like, hey, I was really wanting to check out Knife+Heart, I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll watch it with you. Seen it once, but I'll watch it again and enjoy enough about it because that quirkiness, what I'm talking about. So there's a graininess to the film, and I assume that was intentional to kind of give it more of a period piece feel, to be more realistic for the time period that they're trying to portray. So I'm going to assume that's why it is, but I will say, I appreciate it for that aspect of keeping it to that period, but I also am kind of I would like things to be more high definition, just because I think with horror films, especially with a film that's Giallo, I think Giallo is good for higher definition because usually it's, more aesthetically pleasing. There's a lot of use of colors, which in this film there's a use of a lot of diverse colors, which is really nice in scenes. And yeah, I mean, I just want to see things more clearly, and I think it makes, especially in a Giallo film, it makes things pop a lot more. It's more aesthetically pleasing because the camera work's really good in this, the directing's really good in this, and the set designs are nice. So I just want to be able to see it better. Once again, I understand why they were probably doing that graininess, but I think it would have been better with higher definition. So that's just one of my small gripes with this film. Already talked about the quirkiness with this. There's an interesting dichotomy in this film between, I'm going to read it as I put it down, between people young and in their prime living life boldly versus at the same time people who are aging, having a hard time accepting it, and trying to find their way in life again. It's kind of this, you see it amongst some of the characters, there's a younger group of characters who are just having a good time, living life to its fullest, being bold, doing what they want. And then there's an older set of people who are they feel like they're aging out. They kind of don't know. It's like that midlife crisis type thing. They're trying to refine themselves. They're like, what does this stage in my life mean? And how do I adapt to this now? Because they've kind of hit it, and it's just dawned on them basically that oh, I'm not this group of people over here anymore. I'm not super young. I'm not living my life recklessly and boldly, or I can't really do that at this point in my life. So they're trying to refigure things out. So I thought that having these two groups, these two very separate groups within the same film, was a really interesting thing to watch throughout. And I really enjoyed that about the film. And actually, that would be one thing that I'd like to look at a little bit more if I did rewatch the film. Just go in with that in my mind and kind of pay even more attention to these two groups and how they, interact with each other and have their separate stories and lives throughout it. There was a spinning camera shot in this film. This is another small issue for me. There's a spinning camera shot where it spun 360 a few times, and I understand why they're doing it, and it worked for that moment, and I'm not going to tell you why it was being done, but it worked for that moment, so I understood it. But I felt like they took too many revelations around, and I was getting nauseous. So things like that I don't really like. That's another reason that I don't particularly like a lot of found footage films, because like the super shaky camera really can make me nauseous. Like the film Cloverfield. Cloverfield as a found footage film had so much shakiness because it's like people running with the camera. Like that amount of movement where you can't really focus on anything makes me super nauseous. I'm glad I never saw that film in the theater. Cloverfield, that is. But yeah, there's just one scene like that in Knife and Heart, and I really wish they would have stepped it back. Like, you could do a revelation or two, but like stop, let people refocus on something and then move it again. But they just kept doing like this continuous revelation thing, and it made me really nauseous, and I'm sure it did some other people. Annoying, but that's, you know, small issue. Vanessa Paradis, I don't know how to say her name. So she did a really good job. She's the main character in this film. There's like cat hair flying in the air. Sorry. She was the main character in this film, played Anne, and she did an awesome job. I was very much glued to her acting. I think it was a cross section of a combination of the writing of that character versus how she acted, and that all coming together to be really good. She was very mesmerizing as the main character, and I really loved her performance. I took a look into her a little bit, and she's apparently a very well-renowned actress, singer, and model in France. Although I also saw on her Internet Movie Database acting credits, she was in the film Yoga Hoser, Kevin Smith's Yoga Hosers, which is kind of funny to me because like I'm looking through and she's just like doing all these like French films, and then there's Yoga Hosers, and I was like, okay, interesting. But she did an excellent job. I loved her in this. The very ending, this is my last little bit about the film. The very ending of it felt like there was a little something else that needed to be there. I can't necessarily put my finger on it at the moment, but if I take more time to think about it, maybe if I watch it another time, it'll dawn on me what I think should be there to kind of wrap everything up and make you feel like, that's the ending. Because it kind of ended, like, it tied up all the loose ends, but it kind of also ended abruptly, the way the end was just presented. And if you watch it, you'll see what I mean. You'll definitely see what I mean. Although there is an additional portion that's kind of like a post-credits type thing, which is more like artsy, stylistic, kind of like a, here's the cast, in a sense. And I thought that was cool, and it looked good, and their camera work was really nice for it. But yeah, just like the end of the story portion, there's something missing that just made me feel like, we're ending right there? Okay. So anyway, overall, I did enjoy the film. I would recommend it, especially for people who like Giallo. Also, especially for people who are looking for more entries in the queer horror subgenre, which does not have a ton of entries. At least not a ton of entries that get releases on like streaming services or get press, really. So, yeah. But Giallo and queer horror, if you're looking for either of those or both of those combined, I would definitely recommend this film. I enjoyed it. I would give it, out of 5 stars with halves in play, I'd give it an overall 3. It's not a phenomenal film. Like I said, I'm on the fence of if I would go back to watch it. Probably more on the no category than anything, but I enjoyed it watching it once. And yeah. So thank you everyone for checking out this review. Please do me a solid real quick. Hit that subscribe. It can mean a lot for my channel, and it motivates me to keep doing these things. So also go ahead and put a comment down there. Let's talk about horror. Have you seen this movie? What were your thoughts? Do you want to see it? Ooh, excuse me. What are your thoughts going into it? But also give me some recommendations for films specifically streaming on Shudder right now. I'm going to do a poll in a specific Facebook group that I have. Facebook group that I have, and we will figure out what the next film is I'm going to do from Shudder. But you can put your comments down there and let me know, or you can take a stab at it if you don't know what's streaming on Shudder, and I'll just add that into the votes. So let's do that. And you can also do the likes. That's fine. But please subscribe. Anyway, thank you for checking out this video. Until next time, keep it brutal.